As Vandukes and Obi-Wan made their way through the Senate halls and back toward the Jedi Temple, the weight of what had just happened with Chancellor Palpatine still lingered in Vandukes' mind. But there was another question nagging at him, one that had been brewing since he first encountered the battle on Felucia. He turned to Obi-Wan, curiosity flickering in his gaze. "Obi-Wan," Vandukes began, his tone casual but pointed, "I've seen these droids, but I haven't gotten the full story yet. Who exactly is running the Separatist army? Who's calling the shots on the other side?" Obi-Wan glanced over at Vandukes, clearly understanding that the question was more than just a casual inquiry. The Separatists, or the Confederacy of Independent Systems, are led by various corporate leaders, planetary governors, and warlords. But there's more to it than that. Behind the scenes, there's a more dangerous force at play, one that's been manipulating both sides of the conflict. "Go on," Vandukes said, his attention fully focused now. Obi-Wan hesitated for a moment, clearly weighing how much to reveal. "The ones truly leading the Separatists are the Sith. They've returned after a long absence, and their influence has grown stronger in recent years. You may not be familiar with them, but the Sith are an ancient order, wielders of the dark side of the Force, and they've been enemies of the Jedi for millennia." "The Sith," Vandukes repeated, recalling the Jedi's brief mentions of the Force earlier. "And these guys run the droid army?" "Not directly," Obi-Wan explained. "But they pull the strings. The current figurehead of the Separatists is Count Dooku, a former Jedi who fell to the dark side and became a Sith Lord. He leads the Separatists in the open, but he's only one piece of the puzzle." Obi-Wan's expression darkened as he continued. "The Sith have a long history, and their influence has ebbed and flowed over the ages. Some of the most infamous Sith Lords were nearly unstoppable in their time. Darth Revan, a Jedi who fell to the dark side and led a war that nearly tore the galaxy apart. Darth Nihilus, a being who could consume entire worlds through the Force. Darth Traya, who sought to unravel the Force itself. And many more warlords, tyrants, all driven by their thirst for power." Vandukes listened closely, trying to piece together the larger picture. "And now the Sith are back?" Obi-Wan nodded. "Yes, they returned during this war. Dooku, as I mentioned, is one of them. But there are others. Asajj Ventress, a dark side assassin, was once aligned with Dooku. Maul, another Sith apprentice, terrorized the galaxy until we believed he was defeated. Yet Maul still lives, and his thirst for revenge is dangerous." Vandukes raised an eyebrow. "And who's the one behind all of this? Dooku can't be the one pulling all the strings." "No," Obi-Wan agreed. "There's another Sith, one who has remained hidden in the shadows, guiding both sides of the war. His name is Sidious, but beyond that, we know very little. His true identity and his ultimate plan remain a mystery, even to us. But we suspect that he's been manipulating the entire war from the beginning." Vandukes exhaled, his thoughts racing. So, let me get this straight. You've got an army of droids, led by a fallen Jedi, backed by this shadowy Sith Lord. And they're fighting a republic that's being defended by Jedi and clones. That's the long and short of it, Obi-Wan replied. The Sith use deception and manipulation to achieve their goals, and they've been working in the shadows for years to weaken the Republic. This war is just one part of their larger plan. Vandukes crossed his arms, mulling over everything he'd learned. And you Jedi have been fighting them for, how long? Millennia, Obi-Wan said, his voice heavy with the weight of history. The Jedi and Sith have been locked in conflict for as long as anyone can remember. The Sith seek power through the dark side of the Force, using fear, anger, and hatred to fuel their strength. The Jedi, on the other hand, serve the light side, striving for peace, balance, and harmony. And now, Obi-Wan continued, we find ourselves in the middle of a war that was engineered by the Sith, one that's tearing the galaxy apart. Vandukes let out a low whistle. Sounds like you've got your hands full. And this Sidious character, no one's figured out who he really is. Obi-Wan shook his head. Not yet. He's incredibly powerful, and he's managed to conceal his true identity from everyone. But we're getting closer. The Jedi Council is constantly on the lookout for signs of his presence, and we know that when the time comes, we'll have to confront him. Vandukes' gaze darkened as he processed all of this. The Sith, the war, the manipulation, it all pointed to a galaxy in peril, one that had been fractured by powers that thrived on conflict and darkness. And now, somehow, he was caught in the middle of it. I've fought some pretty nasty things in my time, Vandukes said quietly. But this Sidious, he sounds like a special kind of problem. He is, Obi-Wan replied. And we will face him, eventually. But for now, we have to focus on the war at hand. Vandukes nodded, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over him. This galaxy was embroiled in a conflict that spanned far beyond droids and clone troopers. It was a war of ideals, a battle between light and dark, and somewhere in the midst of it all, the fate of an entire galaxy was being decided. And now, it seemed, Vandukes had been drawn into that battle as well. As Vandukes walked in silence alongside Obi-Wan, his mind was racing, piecing together the puzzle of everything he had learned. The Sith, the war, the manipulation, it all pointed to something far more sinister than even the Jedi seemed to realize. And then there was Palpatine. Vandukes' instincts, honed through countless battles across the multiverse, screamed that something was wrong. I know Palpatine is Sidious, Vandukes thought to himself, his eyes narrowing as he reflected on the Chancellor's unsettling presence. The way Palpatine had probed his mind, the subtle darkness that lingered beneath his calm demeanor, it all pointed to one conclusion. But knowing wasn't enough. If he was going to act on this, if he was going to help the Jedi bring down the Sith, he needed more than suspicion. He needed proof. Dooku. I must find Dooku. The thought crystallized in Vandukes' mind. If he could track down the separatist leader, he might be able to confirm what he already suspected. Dooku had been a Jedi once, before falling to the dark side. He would know the truth about Sidious. And more importantly, Dooku could be the key to uncovering the larger conspiracy that was tearing the galaxy apart. But Vandukes knew he had to play this carefully. The Jedi didn't yet suspect Palpatine, at least, not to the extent he did, and any wrong move could tip the balance. Palpatine was already watching him, and Vandukes couldn't afford to reveal his hand too soon. He needed to find Dooku quietly, without drawing too much attention. As they reached the entrance to the temple, Obi-Wan turned to Vandukes, sensing his quiet contemplation. "Is something troubling you?" Vandukes forced a half-smile, hiding the intensity of his thoughts. "Just processing everything. This galaxy of yours has a lot more going on than I expected." Obi-Wan gave a small nod of understanding. "It's a lot to take in, especially for someone from outside. But you've proven yourself capable, Vandukes. If there's anything more you need to know or any way I can help, just ask." Vandukes appreciated the offer, but he knew this was a path he'd have to walk alone for now. "Thanks, Obi-Wan," he said, his tone measured. "I'll keep that in mind." As they parted ways, Vandukes' mind sharpened on his next move. He needed to find Dooku, and he needed to do it fast. The fate of this galaxy and possibly many others depended on it. Palpatine thinks he's safe behind his mask, Vandukes thought, his resolve hardening. "But I'll find the proof I need. And when I do, this whole game ends." As Vandukes wandered the halls of the Jedi Temple, he found himself lost in thought, trying to make sense of everything that had unfolded. The vastness of this galaxy, with its ancient history of the Sith and Jedi, was almost overwhelming. But then he felt a presence nearby, calm, steady, and filled with curiosity. Turning, he saw Jedi Master Plo Koon, his mask and goggles making him stand out among the other Jedi. Plo approached Vandukes with a welcoming aura, his deep voice carrying a warmth that cut through the stillness of the temple. "Johnny Vandukes," Plo began, his tone thoughtful. "I've heard much about you since your arrival. I've always been fascinated by the unknown reaches of space, and I understand you're from a place we've never encountered before, this planet Earth, in the Sol system, within the Milky Way galaxy. Could you tell me more about it?" Vandukes smiled slightly, appreciating the Jedi Master's interest. "Earth? Yeah, it's a pretty complicated place. Our history is long, and, well, a lot of it's filled with war and invention, though there's plenty of good too." Plo Koon nodded, clearly eager to learn more. Vandukes took a breath and began to explain. "Earth is a small planet, but over the centuries, we've built ourselves up in ways that might seem pretty primitive to you Jedi, but they were huge for us. Some of the key inventions that changed the way we fought and lived started with things like the tank, a massive armored vehicle used in war. Then came warplanes, machines that allowed us to dominate the skies in battles. We developed battleships to control the seas and submarines to fight beneath the waves. But perhaps the most devastating invention in our history was the atomic bomb, an incredibly destructive weapon that changed the face of warfare forever. Vandukes paused for a moment, noticing Plo Koon's calm but intense focus. But it wasn't all about war. We've done a lot in terms of technology, everything from building computers and satellites to connecting the world through the internet. Earth has been evolving fast, especially in the last few centuries. And what of your people? Plo asked. Are they peaceful now, or do they still struggle with conflict? Vandukes sighed. It's a mix, honestly. Humans are, well, complicated. We've always struggled with our darker instincts, but there's a lot of good in us too. In recent years, let's say from around 2000 to 2024, Earth's become more connected than ever. We've learned more about each other, built up massive cities, explored space, though not to the extent you have here. But conflict is still a part of who we are. Wars, politics, disagreements on how things should be done, that's all still a thing. Plo Koon nodded thoughtfully, his eyes reflecting the weight of Vandukes' words. It seems your people are not unlike many civilizations in the galaxy. Progress tempered by conflict, always seeking balance. Yeah, you could say that, Vandukes replied. But there's more to the story. You see, Earth's also connected to the multiverse, a web of realities that's far bigger than just one galaxy. And that's where my role comes in. Vandukes' expression grew more serious as he continued. The first Vandukes, the original one, appeared around the same time Earth was grappling with its biggest challenges. He was the first to walk the multiverse, to understand that every version of Earth, every timeline, had its own challenges, threats, and protectors. His job and the job of every Vandukes after him was to guard Lancaster City in every version of Earth and to keep the multiverse itself safe from forces that wanted to tear it apart. Plo Koon's interest deepened. This first Vandukes, was he chosen for this task, or did he seek it out? No one really knows, Vandukes said, shaking his head. There are legends that he was chosen by the multiverse itself, imbued with powers that allowed him to travel between timelines and face things that most people couldn't even begin to understand. What we do know is that he fought some of the darkest entities ever to emerge from the multiverse, things like Windogos, skinwalkers, and beings even more dangerous. And his legacy continues through you. Plo asked, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. That's right, Vandukes confirmed. Every Vandukes since then has taken up the mantle. We're guardians, protectors, and warriors. Our job is to make sure that whatever darkness creeps through the multiverse doesn't consume the timelines. And now, for some reason, I've been brought here to your galaxy. I'm still trying to figure out why. Kun stood in silence for a moment, processing the enormity of Vandukes' story. The multiverse, as you describe it, is vast beyond our understanding. But I sense a great purpose in your presence here, Vandukes. Perhaps the Force, in its infinite wisdom, has brought you to us for a reason. Maybe, Vandukes replied, his thoughts still swirling with possibilities. But whatever that reason is, I'm going to see it through. Kun placed a hand on Vandukes' shoulder, his voice steady. You are not alone in this, Vandukes. The Jedi will stand with you as you seek the answers you need. Vandukes nodded in appreciation, feeling a sense of calm settle over him. For now, at least, he had allies in this strange galaxy, and perhaps the answers he sought were closer than he realized. As Vandukes stood in conversation with Kun, a thought suddenly struck him. He had always kept a record of Earth's history on his call sign, a sort of personal archive of his homeworld, something to keep him connected to where he came from as he traveled the multiverse. Turning to Vandukes smiled slightly. You know, he began, I actually have something that might help you get a better sense of Earth beyond just what I can tell you. Kun tilted his head, curious. What do you mean? Vandukes raised his wrist, activating his call sign device. The screen came to life with a soft glow, and Vandukes began navigating through its interface. I've kept records of Earth with me, pictures, videos, music, even some older news broadcasts. It's part of who I am, and I figured since I'm always on the move, I'd bring a little piece of home with me wherever I go. He pulled up a few images, first photos of Earth's landscapes, from the skyscrapers of bustling cities like New York, to the quiet beauty of places like the Grand Canyon, snow-covered mountains, and vast forests. Each image seemed to tell a story of Earth's diversity, its beauty, and its complexity. Kun stepped closer, his eyes scanning the images with fascination. Your world, it is vibrant, alive in ways both natural and constructed. Your people have created much from the resources around them. Vandukes nodded, swiping through the images until he found some videos. He played a short clip of a news broadcast, one covering the landing of a Mars rover. The reporter's excited voice filled the air, detailing the latest technological achievement of humankind. This is from one of our space programs, Vandukes explained. We've been reaching out into space for a while now, but nothing on the scale of what you Jedi do. Still, this was a big deal for us, reaching out to another planet and trying to understand the universe beyond Earth. Watched the clip in silence, the weight of what he was seeing clearly evident in his posture. It's remarkable, he said softly. Your people have such curiosity, such drive to explore despite the challenges they face. Next, Vandukes pulled up some music files, letting a few classical pieces play in the background, sweeping orchestras and piano solos that seemed to fill the hall with an almost ethereal quality. Kun closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the music. Such emotion, your music carries the heart of your people. It speaks of both joy and sorrow, strength and vulnerability. Vandukes smiled. That's one way to put it. Music has always been a big part of Earth's culture. Every era, every group of people, has had their own way of expressing themselves through it. Finally, Vandukes showed PLO a few snippets of more personal videos, people walking through city streets, children playing in parks, old home videos of family gatherings. They were ordinary moments, but to Vandukes, they were the essence of Earth's humanity. As the last video ended, Vandukes turned off his call sign, the air quiet once more. PLO Kun stood in contemplation for a moment before turning to Vandukes. Your world, your people, they are filled with life, creativity, and complexity. You have brought a piece of your home here with you, and through it, I understand more of who you are. Vandukes nodded. Yeah, Earth's got its ups and downs, but it's home. And even though I'm far away from it now, it's always with me. PLO Kun placed a hand on Vandukes' shoulder. It is a gift, to carry your world with you. And now, through your records, I too have glimpsed a part of your journey. Vandukes smiled. Glad I could share it with you. As their conversation shifted, PLO Kun's thoughtful gaze settled on the device strapped to Vandukes' wrist, the call sign. You mentioned earlier that this device of yours, the call sign, hasn't been able to connect to the multiverse since you arrived here, PLO said, his voice tinged with curiosity. Perhaps the issue isn't with the device itself, but with the energy required to connect to something beyond our galaxy. Vandukes looked down at his call sign, the screen still flickering with the same error message, timeline unknown. He had tried everything to make it work, but nothing had connected him back to the multiverse. Yeah, it's been dead ever since I got here. I thought maybe it was blocked or something, but I hadn't considered it might just need more power. PLO Kun nodded, a theory forming in his mind. It's possible that the device needs more power than what it currently has access to. If it's designed to communicate across different realities, it may require a more concentrated source of energy than what's naturally available in this galaxy. Vandukes raised an eyebrow, intrigued. You think we can fix it? It's worth investigating, PLO said, motioning for Vandukes to follow him. Come with me. There's a mechanics area beneath the temple where we can examine the device more thoroughly. Perhaps we can uncover what it needs to function again. Curious and hopeful, Vandukes followed PLO Kun through the temple's corridors until they descended to the lower levels, where the mechanics and engineers worked on everything from lightsabers to starship repairs. The space was filled with the hum of machinery, the glow of tools, and the clank of droids being tuned up for maintenance. It had an industrial, yet orderly feel, just the right place for them to explore the call signs problem. PLO led Vandukes to a small workbench where a mechanic awaited, a skilled engineer who had worked on a variety of Jedi technology. This is Vandukes, PLO introduced, and he has a device that may be beyond our usual expertise. We'd like to examine its power system and see if it can be enhanced. The mechanic, a human with a focused expression, took the call sign from Vandukes' wrist and began studying it with interest. After a few minutes of careful examination, he connected the device to a diagnostic tool, which began running an analysis. Vandukes and PLO stood by, watching the process. The device is complex, the mechanic noted, but it's still functioning. The issue isn't with the core system it's trying to reach out, but it doesn't have enough energy to connect to whatever it's designed to. PLO-kun nodded in agreement, his theory solidifying. As I suspected. Vandukes, the device's multiversal communication may require an energy source that's more concentrated than anything readily available in our galaxy. Perhaps the Force, or something similar, could bridge that gap. Vandukes frowned, thinking it over. So it's not broken, it just needs more juice. Exactly, the mechanic said. We could try amplifying the power. The temple's power grid is strong, but we may need a dedicated source. I could rig something up, but it'll take some time. Vandukes thought about it, a wave of hope starting to rise. If they could get the call sign working again, maybe he could re-establish a connection with the other Vandukes, or at the very least, figure out more about how he got stuck in this galaxy. Let's give it a shot. Whatever you need, I'm ready to help. The mechanic nodded and got to work, pulling together components and power converters to channel a greater energy flow into the call sign. As they worked together, Vandukes felt a renewed sense of purpose. If they could power the device, there was a chance he could finally get some answers and perhaps find a way back home. As Vandukes watched the mechanic work on amplifying the power to his call sign, a thought struck him. He turned to PLO-kun, curiosity clear in his voice. What powers your lightsabers? Could that energy source be enough to get this thing working again? PLO-kun considered Vandukes' question for a moment before answering. Our lightsabers are powered by kyber crystals, which are attuned to the Force. These crystals channel the energy that fuels a Jedi's lightsaber, giving it its distinct glow and power. The connection between the kyber crystal and the Jedi is a deeply personal one, as the crystal resonates with the wielder's presence in the Force. Vandukes raised an eyebrow. Sounds like more than just a battery. PLO nodded. It is. The power of a kyber crystal isn't just about raw energy, it's about the bond between the crystal and the Jedi. However, the crystals themselves do hold immense energy enough to power a lightsaber for years, and in some cases, other devices. The mechanic, overhearing the conversation, glanced up from his work. Kyber crystals are potent energy sources, but using one to power your device might be tricky. Your call sign isn't designed to interface with a crystal attuned to the Force. We could try, but the risk would be that the device might not be able to handle the Force connection. Vandukes thought for a moment. So you're saying it's not just about power, it's about how that power interacts with the device. Exactly, PLO confirmed. The kyber crystals are powerful, but they're aligned with the Force. If your device isn't built to handle that kind of energy, it could be unpredictable. And even if it worked, it wouldn't be a sustainable power source unless the device was able to form a similar connection, which seems unlikely given that it's built around multiversal principles rather than the Force. Vandukes nodded, processing the information. All right, so using one of your crystals is out for now. But what about the energy source you're working on? Will that be enough? The mechanic smiled. It should be. I'm rerouting power from the temple's grid, and with a few adjustments, we should be able to give your call sign the boost it needs. It won't be as powerful as a kyber crystal, but it'll be safer and more stable for your device. Vandukes felt a surge of hope. Let's go with that, then. If it works, maybe I can finally figure out why I'm stuck here. PLO-kun placed a reassuring hand on Vandukes' shoulder. We will do everything we can to help you, Vandukes. If this energy source is enough, perhaps you'll be able to re-establish your connection with the multiverse. Vandukes nodded, grateful for the help. As the mechanic continued working on the power system, he couldn't help but feel that this was a step in the right direction, one that might finally give him the answers he was seeking. The moment the mechanic finished rerouting the power and made the final connection, Vandukes' call sign device began to whir and hum with a renewed life. The screen flickered briefly before a steady glow settled over it, displaying information Vandukes hadn't seen since arriving in this galaxy. His connection to the multiverse had been restored. But before Vandukes could even process what was happening, a ripple of energy formed in the air next to him, and with a burst of light, a portal appeared. Out of the portal stepped two figures, instantly recognizable to Vandukes as his fellow multiversal counterparts, other Vandukes, each from their own respective versions of Earth. The first figure was lean, wearing ragged clothing that suggested a life spent on the streets, much like Vandukes, but his eyes carried a depth of experience battle-hardened and haunted. This was the orphan, the Vandukes who had survived the horrors of his timeline by fighting off the man behind the slaughter and his army of killer animatronics. The orphan carried himself with quiet intensity, his presence immediately commanding attention. The second figure was bulkier, dressed in worn, patched-up armor that bore the unmistakable marks of a post-apocalyptic world. His face was hardened, scarred, and behind him, a tattered flag from his universe hung loosely on his back. Fallout Boy, the Vandukes from a world where the events of the Fallout series had actually occurred. His eyes reflected the wasteland he came from, filled with stories of survival in a radiated, ruined world. Street Rat, the Vandukes who had been navigating this galaxy, stared at the two for a moment, then let out a low chuckle. Well, I'll be damned. The multiverse finally comes knocking. The orphan glanced around, his sharp eyes taking in the surroundings of the Jedi Temple. So this is where you've been, Street Rat? Not exactly the kind of place I expected to find you. Fallout Boy let out a dry laugh, adjusting the heavy weapon strap to his back. You always did manage to land yourself in the weirdest situations, Street Rat. A galaxy filled with laser swords and clones. That's new, even for us. Street Rat Vandukes grinned, but there was a seriousness to his tone as he replied. Trust me, this place is more complicated than it looks. The Sith, the Jedi, this entire war, it's a different kind of danger. And now that you two are here, it looks like the multiverse is making sure I don't handle this alone. PLO-kun, who had been watching the entire scene unfold, stepped forward, his calm demeanor unwavering despite the sudden arrival of the other Vandukes. It seems your device has reconnected you to your allies from other realities, he observed, his voice thoughtful. This opens up even more questions, but also possibilities. The orphan gave PLO a respectful nod, though he looked out of place in the serenity of the Jedi Temple. I'm here for a reason, same as you. The multiverse doesn't send us without cause. Something big's happening, and I have a feeling it's tied to whatever's going on in this galaxy. Fallout Boy crossed his arms, scanning the room with a skeptical glance. Whatever it is, I'm ready. This place, it feels like it's teetering on the edge. I've seen this before, just before everything falls apart. Street Rat nodded in agreement. Yeah, there's a lot more going on than just a war between droids and clones. We've got to figure out how this ties into the multiverse, because if it's pulled us all together, then it's big. PLO-kun, ever composed, offered a suggestion. Perhaps the Jedi Council would be interested in meeting your companions. Together, we may find the answers you seek. Street Rat Johnny Vanduke looked between the orphan and Fallout Boy, then back at PLO-kun. Yeah, maybe they will. But first, we need to figure out why we're all here. Something tells me this is just the beginning. With the portal still flickering behind them, the three Vandukes stood united, their mission clear but the path uncertain. Whatever had brought them together, it wasn't just coincidence. There was a storm coming, and they were going to need every ounce of their strength to face it. After their brief reunion, Street Rat Johnny Vanduke led the orphan and Fallout Boy through the Jedi Temple, heading toward the council chambers. The air in the temple felt thick with tension as the three Vandukes walked side by side. PLO-kun accompanied them, maintaining his calm composure, though his mind was undoubtedly racing with questions about these strange new arrivals. As they approached the entrance to the Jedi Council chambers, Street Rat glanced at his fellow Vandukes. Stay sharp. These Jedi might be peaceful, but they've seen their fair share of battles, and they don't take kindly to surprises. The orphan gave a brief nod, his eyes scanning the hall for any signs of danger, while Fallout Boy simply adjusted the weight of his weaponry, his post-apocalyptic gear clinking softly. Let's get this over with, Fallout Boy muttered. The sooner we know what's going on, the sooner we can get to work. The large doors to the Jedi Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the circular room where the council awaited. The same gathering of Jedi Masters from Street Rat's previous meeting was present. Yoda, Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Shaak Ti, and others all seated in their customary positions, their gazes fixed on the newcomers. Yoda's small form was centered among them, his deep eyes observing the Vandukes with intense curiosity. He motioned for them to enter, his cane tapping gently on the floor. New faces, these are. From far away, they come, yes. Street Rat stepped forward, bowing slightly in respect. Masters, these are my fellow Vandukes. This is the orphan, he gestured toward the lean, battle-hardened figure, and Fallout Boy, he said, indicating the heavily armored survivor. They come from different timelines, different versions of Earth, but they're here now, same as me. Mace Windu leaned forward, his sharp gaze moving from one Vanduke to the next. So, there are more of you. Each from a different timeline, but all bearing the same name. The orphan nodded. That's right. Each of us protects Lancaster City in our respective timelines. We've all faced different threats, some you probably wouldn't believe, but we're united by the same purpose, keeping the multiverse from collapsing under the weight of all the dangers out there. Fallout Boy crossed his arms, his voice rough but steady. I come from a world that's been ripped apart by nuclear war, where survival's not just about being tough, it's about making the right alliances. If we're here, something big is happening. Bigger than any one galaxy. The council sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the gravity of their words. Yoda's ears twitched slightly, his eyes narrowing in thought. Pulled together, the three of you are strong. The connection between you and the multiverse must be. But a reason, we must find. Ki-Adi-Mundi stroked his long beard thoughtfully. The presence of multiple versions of one being suggests a disturbance in the fabric of reality itself. Your arrival here is not a coincidence. Something has brought you to our galaxy, and perhaps it is tied to the greater conflict we face. Mace Windu's gaze darkened. If the multiverse is involved, we need to understand how. The Sith have been manipulating this war from the shadows. If they've found a way to use the multiverse to their advantage, the entire galaxy could be at risk. The orphan, always sharp, stepped forward slightly. The Sith. I've fought plenty of dark forces in my time, but this is something new. If they've managed to tap into the multiverse, then everything we know is in danger. Yoda's gaze softened, though his voice carried the weight of wisdom and concern. Know this, we do not. But investigate, we must. A connection between the Sith and the multiverse, perhaps there is. Fallout Boy, ever pragmatic, added, if the Sith are the ones behind this, we need to stop them before they can do any real damage. Whatever powers they're playing with, we've seen what happens when dark forces mess with reality itself. It never ends well. Plo Koon, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. Masters, if I may, the appearance of these Vandukes may offer us an opportunity. If they are connected to the multiverse, they could help us track down the root of this disturbance, whether it's the Sith or something else entirely. Mace Windu nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps. But we need more information before we can act. For now, we'll continue to monitor the situation. In the meantime, we ask that you, Vanduke, and your companions, work with us to uncover whatever is behind this. Street Rat exchanged a glance with the orphan and Fallout Boy, then nodded. We're in. If there's a threat to the multiverse, we're not backing down. But we'll need your help too. The Sith aren't our usual kind of enemy. Yoda's voice was calm but filled with purpose. Help you, we will. Together, face this challenge, we must. With the meeting drawing to a close, the three Vandukes felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever had brought them together, it was far from over. The Sith, the multiverse, and the fate of countless realities were at stake. And now, they would face it together with the Jedi as their allies. Unbeknownst to the Vandukes or the Jedi, something far more dangerous had slipped through when the portal opened. As the connection to the multiverse was restored, dark forces from the ancient past, the imposter and the false storyteller, had followed in the wake of the portal's energy, entering this galaxy without being detected. The imposter, a twisted version of a Vanduke who had once been human but was now locked inside a mechanical body after being slain by monsters, was a horrifying sight. His once human features were now cold, metallic, and twisted, his robotic form a chilling reminder of what he had become. He had once led the Bioslaves, an army of robotic humans bent on domination in the multiverse, and now, he was here. Beside him was the false storyteller, a once great Vanduke who had fallen under the imposter's influence. His abilities to slightly rewrite reality made him one of the most dangerous beings in the multiverse. He could twist events, change outcomes, and warp reality in ways that left his enemies scrambling to make sense of what was real. His presence brought a coldness, an unsettling feeling that reality itself was fragile and could be bent at any moment. And now they were both here, in the heart of this galaxy. Darth Sidious, sitting in his private office, had sensed their arrival the moment they slipped through. His eyes gleamed with a mixture of delight and cunning. These were not just ordinary beings, they were forces from another dimension, potentially more powerful than even the Sith. If he could harness their abilities, especially the false storyteller's power to rewrite reality, he could shift the balance of the galaxy and cement his rise to power even faster than planned. Sidious reached out with the dark side of the Force, sending a telepathic invitation to the imposter and the false storyteller. His voice echoed through their minds, smooth yet filled with the darkness of his intentions. You have come a long way, travelers. I sense in you the power to change everything. Reality itself bends at your will. Come to me. Together, we can reshape this galaxy, and beyond. The impostor and the false storyteller, lurking in the shadows of Coruscant's underbelly, both felt the pull of Sidious' voice. They exchanged a glance, a shared understanding forming between them. If the Sith Lord knew they were here and was extending an invitation, it meant he saw potential in their powers and perhaps a path to greater control over this galaxy. But the impostor, with his machine-cold logic, knew they couldn't trust Sidious entirely. Still, the opportunity to reshape reality was too tempting to ignore. Without hesitation, they moved through the city's darkened streets, making their way toward the Senate building where Sidious awaited them in his office. As they arrived, Sidious stood in the center of the room, cloaked in shadows, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. The impostor and the false storyteller stepped inside, their forms casting eerie silhouettes against the dark, regal decor of the office. The air was thick with tension, and yet, in that moment, the Sith Lord and the two multiversal threads seemed to understand one another. Sidious' voice cut through the silence. "Welcome, my new allies. We have much to discuss." The impostor and the false storyteller stood before Darth Sidious in the shadowy expanse of his office. The air was thick with dark energy, a silent tension simmering as these three powerful figures sized each other up. Sidious, ever the master of manipulation, remained calm and composed, though his yellowed eyes gleamed with excitement. The possibilities of what these two beings from the multiverse could offer him were endless. The impostor, his mechanical form towering and cold, spoke first, his voice a harsh blend of robotic distortion and lingering human tones. "You summoned us, Sith. You claim to know who we are, but what is it you want from us?" Sidious smiled, the corners of his mouth twisting in satisfaction. "What I want, dear impostor, is what you already offer. Power. Control. The ability to reshape reality itself, to bend the universe to my will." He turned his gaze to the false storyteller. "And you, with your ability to rewrite events, can assist me in ways even the greatest Sith have never dreamed." The false storyteller's eyes narrowed. He was a Vanduk, once bound to protect the multiverse, but now corrupted, his reality-altering powers twisted. "You speak of rewriting reality as if it's something you can control. My power doesn't bend so easily to the whims of mortals. What makes you think we would even ally with you?" Sidious chuckled softly, his voice a smooth, calculating hum. "Because you want what I can offer. The Jedi and the Vandukes, they would never allow you the freedom to reshape this galaxy as you see fit. But I..." He paused, savoring the moment. "I can give you the freedom to create the chaos you desire. Together, we can destroy the Jedi, and the Vandukes who stand in your way, and build a new order, one where you both have the power you've been denied." The impostor's mechanical joints creaked as he stepped forward, his glowing eyes fixating on Sidious. "We care little for your Republic or your Jedi. What we seek is domination over time, over reality, over every version of existence. But you, Sith, are a dangerous ally. Why should we trust you? Sidious smiled, raising his hands in a gesture of goodwill, though his dark presence filled the room like a rising storm. You shouldn't trust me. Nor should I trust you. But we share a common goal: the destruction of those who stand in our way. The Vandukes, your enemies, are in this galaxy now, but I know where they are, and I can deliver them to you. Imagine, imposter. False storyteller, the satisfaction of crushing the very Vandukes who defeated you in the Great Multiversal War. The mention of the Vandukes, the very ones who had opposed them during the Great Multiversal War, sparked something in both the imposter and the false storyteller. The imposter's mechanical hands flexed, metal groaning under the pressure. The false storyteller's expression remained calm, but there was a spark of interest in his eyes. You claim to know where they are, the false storyteller said, his voice low and calculating. But they are clever, and this universe is vast. If we are to deal with them, we need assurances that you can deliver what you promise. Sidious nodded slowly. The Vandukes are already within the Jedi Temple. They believe they are safe, that they are united. But I am the puppet master, pulling strings they cannot see. Soon, they will walk directly into the trap I've set for them. All I need is for you to be ready when the time comes. The imposter and the false storyteller exchanged a glance. There was no trust between them and Sidious, but the prospect of finally crushing the Vandukes who had humiliated them was too tempting to pass up. They could play along for now. Once the Jedi and the Vandukes were dealt with, they could decide what to do with Sidious. You have our interest, the false storyteller finally said, his voice soft but deadly. But know this, Sith. If you betray us, or if you prove unable to deliver what you promise, we will tear this reality apart piece by piece. We do not need you to destroy everything. Sidious smiled, the darkness in his eyes deepening. Oh, I would expect nothing less. But rest assured, together, we will shape this galaxy and perhaps even the multiverse into what it was always meant to be. The era of the Jedi will end, and a new order will rise. The imposter and the false storyteller turned to leave, their figures dissolving into the shadows as they prepared for what lay ahead. Sidious remained standing in the center of his office, his thoughts racing. The pieces were falling into place: Vanduke, the Jedi, the Separatists, and now these beings from the multiverse. The time was coming when he would seize control of everything, bending not just the galaxy, but reality itself, to his will. But as the door slid shut, Sidious allowed himself a rare moment of contemplation. The imposter and the false storyteller were dangerous, and he knew full well they would turn on him the moment it suited their needs. But for now, they were his allies, and with their help, the galaxy would soon be his. Let them think they have the upper hand, Sidious thought to himself, his expression dark and confident. In the end, all will fall to the dark side.